the day I watched Victor's interview. I left the divorce papers on the table and moved out of the home I had guarded alone for 3 years. In the interview, Victor said that the one thing in his life he felt most at peace with was that, at the moment between life and death, he had protected the person he cared about the most. The person he protected wasn't me, it was his white moonlight, Selena. 2 days later, at the farewell ceremony for the medical team heading to the earthquake zone in City Y, the same host asked me the same question. As an outstanding surgeon, Dr. Laura, what do you consider your proudest and most guilt-free moment? I looked toward Victor, just a few steps away, knowing full well that my husband was injured protecting his lover. I said, I still did everything I could to save his life. Chapter 1. In the video, Victor, once again hailed as an outstanding entrepreneur, still carried the same effortless grace he had back then, even sitting in a wheelchair. He was composed, elegant, aristocratic as ever. The comments flooded the screen. If you marry someone like Victor. He's perfect, even in a wheelchair. Still so charming. I smiled. Marriage, after all, is like drinking water, only you know whether it's warm or cold. As the interview drew to a close, the host shifted to a lighthearted, gossipy question. Mr. Victor, as a successful entrepreneur, could you share what you feel most proud of, something you did without regret? It was such a mild question that even the audience found it dull, but Victor paused for a long moment, then pointed at his crippled right leg. The thing I feel most at peace with, he said softly, is that, in a moment between life and death, I protected the person I cared about the most. The host lit up with surprise. Was it your wife? Victor only smiled, saying nothing. His silence made him appear even more magnetic. That gentle lowering of his gaze stirred waves of admiration online. Wow, Victor is so devoted. He's the kind of man women dream of. Even losing a leg couldn't stop him from protecting his beloved. So pure, so romantic. He's still so handsome, like a novel come to life. Bless them, true love forever. People who didn't know the truth genuinely meant their well wishes. Only I knew. The woman Victor had risked his life to protect wasn't me. It was Selena, the same woman who had disappeared years ago and returned to City C 3 years ago. I turned off the video and sat alone in the dark for 2 hours. Then I called Victor. As expected, no answer. I tried Daniel, his assistant. As always, he lied through his teeth. Madam, Mr. Victor is in a meeting. May I take a message for him? I glanced at the clock. It was 10:30 p.m. I sighed. No need to make things harder for an employee. It's fine. Just tell Victor that I've left the divorce papers in the study. He should sign them as soon as possible. Chapter 2. By the time I settled into my apartment, it was past midnight. As I finished my shower, Victor called 3 times in a row. If it weren't the middle of the night, I might have thought the company had suddenly gone bankrupt. Just as I hesitated to call back, the 4th call came through. Laura, where are you? Why aren't you at home? I raised an eyebrow. Daniel, the ever-vigilant assistant, had actually failed to report. I moved back to the apartment. Didn't Daniel tell you? A brief silence. Then Victor's voice came, 5 words. Laura, my leg hurts. Aw. So Daniel hadn't failed. Victor just couldn't face reality. But that leg, the one he injured for Selena, what right did he have to complain to me about its pain? Is that so? I said coolly. And what does that have to do with me? His voice on the other end was hoarse. I couldn't tell whether from pain or anger. Laura, you're my wife. I laughed, openly. For once. Victor. Last week's hospital exam, the gynecological report shows my hymen is intact. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, I hung up on him myself, and blocked his number. Outside, the rain whispered against the windows, seeping into the room's chill. In weather like this, Victor's damaged leg would be cold, swollen, and heavy, as lifeless as stone. Before, out of professional duty, I used to prepare him herbal medicine for circulation, warming it again and again, so he could take a hot bath and ease the pain when he got home. But 9 times out of 10, he would reject it, and always with the same words. Don't bother doing unnecessary things. So tonight, his sudden weakness could mean only one thing. He'd been shaken by the divorce. Humans are strange creatures. He was the one who proposed marriage. He was the one who left me alone for 3 years. He was the one who lost a leg for his mistress. And yet, after flaunting his love that transcends life and death, he still had the audacity to turn back and say to me, "You are my wife." Chapter 3. As expected. After the sleepless chaos of the night, I fell once again into a nightmare. The city shook. People ran, screaming. Children cried. Blood covered the operating table. There were too many wounded. Too many for us to save. Inside the makeshift tent hospital, I couldn't even remember how long it had been since I last rested. Emma, who was helping me change into a new surgical gown, stuffed a piece of chocolate into my mouth, her eyes red from exhaustion. "Can you still hold on?" she asked. 72 hours had passed since the earthquake. Every single second was a battle to snatch lives back from the Reaper. As long as there was a single breath left, we had no right to say no. Emma wiped her tears away and ran off to call for more help. But I never expected that the next 2 patients they brought in would be a man and a woman, tightly locked in each other's arms, inseparable even in the face of death. One of the rescuers carrying the stretcher said breathlessly, "It's so touching." Must have been right when the earthquake hit. The man shielded the woman under him, used his own body to give her a world to survive in. Everyone was murmuring in awe and pity. Everyone except me. I stared, frozen, at the hand that still shielded the woman's body. The one I couldn't pry loose. That hand, and the custom diamond ring on its finger, looked painfully familiar. If I wasn't mistaken, that was Victor's hand. The ring on his finger was the exact match to the one I wore around my neck. Perhaps noticing how long I had gone silent, one of the assistants whispered hesitantly, "Doctor, should we call neurosurgery for this case?" Only then did I look down and notice the man's leg, flesh mangled and torn through to the bone. The white splinters piercing his skin. He had lost too much blood. His condition was critical. The pain he must have endured was far beyond what any ordinary person could survive. And yet, for 72 hours, he had held on, never letting the woman beneath him suffer a single scratch. The chocolate in my mouth turned sickly sweet, bitter with the metallic taste of blood. As I bit through my lip, I tilted my head back sharply. But still, I couldn't hold back the tears. Emma, choking up herself, wiped my face clean, tears and cold sweat alike. "Doctor," she pleaded, "please save him. If he dies, his lover will be devastated." I didn't know whether Selena would be devastated, but as Victor's wife, my heart, in that moment, shattered completely. Chapter 4. When the alarm rang, I woke up feeling as if I had just worked 2 consecutive night shifts. Even iced Americano couldn't rescue me from the exhaustion and numbness carved into my face. So when the hospital director summoned me, I almost suspected I had made a critical mistake at work. I mentally reviewed everything, no errors. Still, with a cold sweat clinging to my back, I went straight to his office. The moment I entered, his gray brows furrowed deeply. "Laura, this mental state of yours won't do. Look at yourself. What patient would trust you like this?" I couldn't refute him, so I admitted fault. Next to his serene, age-defying appearance, I did look like a hollow shadow of a human being. Perhaps seeing my sincerity, the director's tone softened as he got to the point. "Did you watch the news last night? There was an earthquake in Y City. The magnitude isn't as high as the one we faced half a year ago, but the cold climate and poor medical conditions are making rescue work extremely difficult." Another earthquake. I didn't know if it was PTSD, but the hand in my lab coat pocket trembled violently, and my palm filled with cold sweat. "Our hospital is forming a medical team to go there, and you," my nails, neatly trimmed, had already dug into my palms when I interrupted him. "Director, let me go." The old man nodded approvingly. "I was going to assign you anyway. Your skill level and prior rescue experience are exactly what we need. But one thing, Laura, don't overexert yourself again. Don't push to the point of collapse like last time." I wanted to tell him, That last time, my collapse wasn't just from exhaustion, at least, not entirely. During Victor's surgery, I had bitten my lips until they bled. They were so torn that I couldn't remove my mask in public for half a month afterward. I endured until the very end of the operation, until the sterile cloth was lifted, and I was forced to look straight at Victor's face. Still as handsome as ever, that was the moment I broke. It wasn't the earthquake that crushed me. It was his betrayal that dealt the fatal blow. Chapter 5. Leaving the director's office. I stood in the corridor under the sun for a while, but before I could feel any warmth, Daniel called. Madam, Mr. Victor asked me to check where his silver tie with the dark pattern is. He needs it for tonight. I let out a short laugh. Daniel, tell your Mr. Victor to speak for himself instead of sending you to disgust me. There was a pause. Then Daniel spoke again, cautious as always. Mr. Victor said he hopes you'll calm down and not act on impulse. I almost laughed from sheer anger. How good must my temper be for Victor to think he can trample all over me like this? Then tell him, if he doesn't want to sign, fine, he can wait for the lawsuit. I suddenly realized this upcoming medical mission couldn't have come at a better time. Of course, I always wish for world peace and a safe, prosperous earth, but being able to step away from my old life, even briefly, felt like being given a rare chance to breathe. I was almost eager to leave, yet Victor seemed possessed. Daniel's calls came one after another, more in a few days than in the past 4 years combined, after stripping away all the nonsense. The message was simple. Victor wanted to see me. He thought we needed to have an honest talk. According to Daniel's exact words, Laura, I don't think your sudden decision to divorce is rational, even if you don't think about yourself. You should consider both families' elders. Typical Victor. When he couldn't sway me, he played the family card. After all, ours was half an arranged marriage. We grew up in the same circle. Our parents were friends. When we reached the right age, two unmarried people naturally became a perfect match. From the first meeting to the wedding, our parents handled nearly everything. I merely nodded in agreement. After hearing that Victor himself didn't object, no one knew the truth, that the only reason I agreed was because I had liked Victor for as long as I could remember. That tall, lean boy in a white shirt had filled every corner of my youth. But back then, Victor never looked at me. All of his attention, his affection, was given to Selena. Chapter 6. Selena was beautiful and rebellious, despite having a father who gambled and drank his life away. She was never timid or self-conscious. On the contrary, she bloomed like a wild flower, bold and dazzling at an age when such brilliance was almost inappropriate. She skipped classes, talked back to teachers, and handed in blank exam sheets. More than once, I ran into her in the restroom, wearing heavy makeup and smoking a cigarette through a thin veil of blue smoke. She curved her bright red lips at me and teased, "Good girl, want one?" Compared to Selena, I really was a good girl. Plain uniform, neat hair, and a face untouched by rebellion. Next to her, my existence seemed utterly dull. In my memory, the only time Selena ever wore her school uniform without makeup was when we raised money to help her mother. Even then, while accepting charity, she stood tall, neither humble nor arrogant. "Thank you all for your kindness," she said. "I'll pay every cent back." And she did. After graduation, Selena repaid every one of us, except Victor. That was when I learned that Victor had donated 200,000 yuan to her, 10 times what the rest of us had given combined. Selena, of course, couldn't afford to pay him back. All the money she earned from summer jobs had been stolen by her father for gambling and drinking. Even the amount she repaid us with, she had borrowed from Victor. At the time, I thought Selena accepted Victor's help because they were already in a relationship. But I was wrong. Selena didn't even take the college entrance exam. She left C-City soon after graduation. On the night before she left, she asked Victor to meet her at a small motel. She wanted to repay him in her way. I don't know what happened that night, But I do know, she never managed to return the money, because on the night I married Victor, he got drunk, refused to enter our bedroom, and fell asleep on the sofa. I sat beside him with a cup of honey water, keeping him company through the night, listening to every word of his drunken confession. Selena, if I had known it would come to this, I never should have let you go that night. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. The next morning, I simply asked for a divorce. Chapter 7. I agreed to the arranged marriage because I loved Victor, not because I could endure a husband whose heart was elsewhere. No, not even elsewhere. We didn't even share a bed. The irony was unbearable. Victor had the audacity to accuse me of treating our marriage like a joke, as if he hadn't been the one who, on our wedding night, drunkenly confessed with tears in his eyes that he never should have let Selena go. I had no choice but to play back his own drunken words for him, that shameless confession of love for another woman, so that he could hear for himself what he had said. Only then did Victor, pained and humiliated, finally tell me about his tragic first love. He swore that his story with Selena was over, that I was the woman he truly wanted to spend his life with, and I believed him, because I knew that ever since Selena had vanished without a word, she had cut off all contact with everyone, including Victor. After that long, heavy talk the morning after our wedding, Victor and I became cautiously polite. Our marriage, tended so carefully, looked perfect from the outside. Victor would pick me up from the hospital after work, sometimes bringing flowers or jewelry. On my days off, I cooked and tried to be the gentle, virtuous wife that every woman was expected to be, though the thorn from that wedding night still lodged deep between us, keeping us from real intimacy. Our relationship gradually softened, almost like a normal, loving couple. On our first anniversary, Victor brought flowers, booked a candlelight dinner, and presented a pair of custom diamond rings to make up for the casually chosen ones from our wedding. The atmosphere was tender, romantic. When Victor leaned in to kiss me, I thought, finally I had waited long enough for the moon to break through the clouds. But then, his breathing grew heavy, his movements more restrained, when he suddenly stopped, frozen in an awkward position. His eyes were bloodshot, his forehead beaded with sweat. Naively, I thought he was simply nervous, unsure of how to continue, so I swallowed my embarrassment and reached out to unbutton his shirt. But Victor grabbed my wrist, hard, so hard that I cried out in pain. Yet he didn't let go. He just looked at me, or perhaps through me, at someone else entirely. Chapter 8. I don't know how long that silence lasted. Eventually, Victor released me, sat up, and ran a hand over his face. Tears wet the corners of my eyes. I asked him, my voice trembling, why? Victor turned his back to me. After a long pause, he said quietly, Laura, you're too good. I can't bring myself to touch you. More tears spilled out. I refused to accept it. Victor, why? But Victor said nothing. He just stood up and walked away. The door slammed shut behind him. I sat there, humiliated beyond words. My body, once warm and pliant, turned cold, curling into itself, stiff and small. From that night on, everything between us began to unravel. He stopped coming home. I started clinging harder, and then I found out the reason Victor had stopped halfway, the reason his body had responded but his mind had shut down, was because Selena had come back to Sea City. If it hadn't been for that year we'd spent together, I might have let him go. But once you've glimpsed happiness, how do you let it slip away? I cried. I begged. I refused to let the marriage I had worked so hard for die so easily. But it was only ever my one-sided struggle. Victor stopped answering my calls. Daniel became the messenger between us, handling every duty a husband should have. Even when I had my appendectomy, it was Daniel who signed the consent form. Still, I couldn't give up. I clung to Victor's promises. Over and over, I demanded, Victor, how can you go back on your word? Until the earthquake, until the moment I saw Selena, lying safely beneath his body, his arms shielding her from death. Only then did I realize, how pathetic my 3 years of persistence had been, so I let go, out of consideration for Victor's injury. I didn't file for divorce immediately, but I never imagined he would later go on national television, and with that very same deep love for Selena, destroy the last shred of dignity I had left in this marriage. That night, I sat alone in the dark for 2 hours, picking up the pieces of my broken self, again and again, rebuilding, reshaping, like a phoenix reborn in fire. Victor, how dare you? Chapter 9. Before heading to the earthquake zone, I went home once. As usual, my parents were somewhere overseas, living their carefree, glamorous lives, in the vast, empty villa. The only person there was my eldest brother, Santiago, fresh off a business negotiation. Ever since he had taken over the company, his presence had become even more commanding than before. Nothing ever escaped his sharp eyes, not even the slightest flicker of my emotions. So, he said, narrowing his eyes, "You've been hurt? Because of Victor?" Santiago was 4 years older than me, more than a brother. He was the real parent I'd had growing up, stricter than our romantic, free-spirited father and mother, yet fiercely protective. Under his influence, I grew up to be the perfect good girl in everyone's eyes, obedient, polite, a model student who never broke the rules. By the age of 26, the wildest thing I had ever done was stepping outside our social circle to become a surgeon. When I first submitted that career choice, Santiago even took a special trip back from the army to talk to me. It was during that talk that he first realized my secret. I liked Victor. I had chosen medicine because of him. He loved basketball, and he was always getting hurt. I used to imagine that one day, when he got injured again, I'd be the one to heal him, to bring him back to life with my own hands. I still remember the look on Santiago's face when he found out the real reason I wanted to study medicine. It was a mixture of disbelief, disappointment, and frustration. "Laura, is it because Dad, Mom, and I didn't give you enough love or confidence? Or because there's no one else in our circle you deem worthy? Why would you choose to love someone in such a humiliating way?" That was the only time I had ever seen Santiago truly lose his temper with me. Either go after what you want, or let it go completely, but don't indulge in this pathetic self-sacrifice. "Laura, I can't stand that kind of sentimentality." So I chose to let go, but I still became a surgeon. I still walked the path I had chosen. What I never imagined was that 10 years later, I would really end up saving Victor's life, right when he betrayed me and our marriage, shielding another woman beneath his body. Chapter 10. Santiago noticed me drifting off in thought, and frowned, knocking on the table. "Speak, whatever happens, your brother's got your back." "Brother," I said quietly, "I'm getting a divorce." His frown deepened. "You've thought it through?" I nodded. "Yes, the divorce papers have already been delivered to Daniel." Santiago let out a long sigh. 4 years ago, when you decided to marry Victor, I asked you the exact same question. You said you'd thought it through then, too." It was true. The night before the wedding, Santiago had called me into his study. He had just come back from the army. "Laura," he said then, "as long as I'm here, you can do whatever you want. You don't need an arranged marriage. Tell me honestly, have you really thought this through?" At that time, I had been full of hope. After all, it was Victor who had agreed to the marriage first. "Brother, I've thought about it. I really like Victor. I'll take responsibility for my choice." But reality proved me wrong. "I know you're angry," I told him now. "You've always protected me so well. But I need to grow up someday. Like I said, I'll take responsibility for my own choices, including this divorce." Santiago was silent for a long time. Then he sighed helplessly. "You've grown up, and I can't control you anymore." But the moment he learned that I was leaving for Y City the next morning to join the medical relief team, his temper exploded again. "Laura, you've really grown wings. Huh? You dare keep something this big from me?" But I knew his bark was worse than his bite, so I snapped right back. "And what about you? You didn't tell us when you almost got yourself killed, on a special mission, did you? Since we both had secrets, we had no choice but to call it even. That night, he took me out for a big dinner as a farewell gesture. When he drove me home, he added a new contact to my phone. Eric, you remember him, right? If anything happens over there, call him. Of course I remembered. Eric, Santiago's old comrade in arms, rougher than Santiago, but just as reliable and maybe even more handsome. I didn't think I'd need to call him, but I nodded obediently anyway. Santiago was leaving for S-City early in the morning, so he couldn't see me off himself. The least I could do was not make him worry. Chapter 11. Goodbyes are often tinged with sorrow, but sometimes they can also burn with passion. The red carnation pinned to my chest seemed to bring tears to many people's eyes, including Victor's. I hadn't expected him to appear at the send-off ceremony. By all logic, he shouldn't even have known that I was joining the medical relief team at the quake zone. Yet there he was, his wheelchair parked not far from the crowd, expression grave, eyes dark and unreadable. I, however, almost wanted to laugh. Why pretend affection between two people who should have long since become strangers? If I had any talent for writing clickbait, I might have sent this to a gossip blog myself. Shocking! After 3 years of neglect, my husband suddenly regrets everything the moment I'm leaving for the disaster zone. Is it love rekindled? Or another manipulation? As if hearing my thoughts, a microphone suddenly appeared in front of me. Doctor, as an outstanding surgeon, what do you consider the thing you're most proud of? The same question, the same host, and suddenly, I almost laughed again. So this is what they mean when they say karma always comes full circle. I knew exactly what kind of polished, inspiring answer the host was expecting, but instead, I turned my gaze toward Victor, who sat only a few steps away. What I'm most proud of, I said, is that during the earthquake 6 months ago, even knowing my husband was injured while protecting his lover, I still did everything in my power to save his life. When I finished, I didn't care about the stunned host or the audible gasp rippling through the crowd. I simply turned around and boarded the bus to the airport. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Victor pushing himself up from the wheelchair, his face twisted, eyes wide with fury. If Daniel hadn't held him down, I might have witnessed a literal medical miracle. Emma crept closer, tugging gently at my sleeve. Laura, are you okay? Okay? How could I not be okay? For the first time, not just in these past few months, but since the night Victor slammed that door 3 years ago, I could finally breathe freely. I smiled at Emma. Perfect, I said. Better than ever. Chapter 12. The moment the plane landed, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating in my pocket. Santiago, Daniel, the hospital director, people I knew and people I didn't. None of them gave me a moment's peace, so I simply ignored them all, snapped a quick photo, and posted it to my social feed. I've arrived. Life goes on. Dramatic, maybe even childish, but it somehow got hundreds of likes. Among the endless stream of "stay safe" and "we're proud of you," Santiago's comment stood out like a sore thumb. I see Eric. He's the tallest one in your photo. Startled, I looked around, and sure enough, there was Eric. That sharp, striking face impossible to miss. I hadn't expected him to be here. And suddenly my heart skipped a beat, leaving me both flustered and unsure of myself. It wasn't until I noticed the SWAT uniform he was wearing that I realized he wasn't here for me at all. He was here to escort the medical team into the quake zone. My fluttering heart, completely self-inflicted. The road to the disaster area was rough, and 3 off-road vehicles had been sent to pick us up. Emma and I squeezed into the back seat of one, and she spent the entire ride shouting in my ear, "He's so handsome. Oh my God, Laura, he's so handsome." She wasn't wrong. Eric had that kind of rugged, dangerous good looks, the kind that made girls blush without even realizing it. And Emma's blush didn't fade for the entire trip. If I hadn't checked her pulse and breathing myself, I might have suspected altitude sickness. If you like him, go for it, I said. I've got his number. Her eyes went wide as saucers. Wait, what? How do you have Mr. Handsome's number? Don't tell me you too. I pushed her overactive imagination away, trying to save my innocent reputation. Relax. He's my brother's old comrade in arms. Oh, well, in that case, never mind. Emma was 4 years younger than me, and already at the age for serious relationships. Honestly, since Santiago approved of Eric, I thought she might give it a try. But no, Emma had her own brand of logic. Why not? I asked. She pouted. Because Santiago never looks at me, only over me, and that captain of his? Same breed. I'm not wasting my time on another one like that. Chapter 13. Even though I knew Emma was talking about their height, I still felt as if I'd been stabbed right in the chest. If only I'd been as clear-headed as Emma back then, I wouldn't have ended up like this. But Emma just had to twist the knife. Director, what's really going on between you and Victor? Is he that husband of yours? I sighed, deliberately skipping the first question and cutting the topic short. He is. But soon, he won't be anymore. That did the trick. Emma obediently shut her mouth. Though, of course, she couldn't resist sneaking glances at Eric's profile in the front seat. Suddenly, Eric turned around. Emma panicked and practically buried her face in my shoulder, pretending to be dead, left with no choice. I stepped in for both of us and gave Eric a polite nod. Captain, thank you for taking the trouble to come get us. Maybe it was my imagination, but his eyes seemed to soften a little, even carrying a hint of a smile. It's my honor. Thank you all for arriving so quickly. He paused, then added, if there's anything you need, just say it. I'll do everything I can. Everyone murmured their thanks, but no one made any requests. The situation in the quake zone was far worse than we had imagined. The local houses, made mostly of mud and wood, offered no resistance to the tremors, and the drastic temperature swings of the highlands posed another deadly threat to the injured still trapped beneath the rubble. Worse yet, a cold front was closing in. If the rescue wasn't completed before the snowfall, the death toll would rise even higher. After an emergency discussion, the medical team split into 2 groups. One stayed at the temporary field station to treat the injured. The other followed the rescue units deeper into the disaster zone. My request to enter the core area was unanimously denied, so I stayed behind, doing my duty at the temporary post. By the time I realized that my feet and calves had completely lost feeling from the cold, more than 20 hours had passed. Unable to endure any longer, I stepped out of the tent, hugging the improvised hand warmer Emma had made for me using a saline bottle. My legs were so numb that when a man suddenly fell to his knees in front of me, I couldn't even dodge in time. He was shouting something, words I couldn't understand, and his excitement was so intense that, if not for the devotion in his eyes, I would have thought he was here to cause trouble. I was frozen in confusion when Eric arrived. Chapter 14. You saved his wife. He's here to thank you. Hearing Eric's explanation, I finally noticed the cotta scarf Lucas held reverently in his hands, and the buttered pastry cradled in his arms. To be honest, I've never liked the smell of yak butter, but I didn't know how to refuse such pure, heartfelt gratitude. Thankfully, Eric stepped in. He gently persuaded Lucas to take back the heavy pastry, and, on my behalf, accepted the cotta. I didn't know what the white silk scarf symbolized in their faith, but I still felt undeserving of it. I don't even remember which one was his wife. Because you've saved too many people. I looked up sharply and met Eric's deep, steady gaze. They'll all remember you, he said quietly. They'll remember the doctor who saved them. But a lump rose in my throat, and suddenly I wanted to cry. Not from sadness, but from that helpless ache that comes when you know you can't save them all. But there are still so many we couldn't save. That's not your fault, Eric replied firmly, his tone calm and grounded. What you need to do now is rest, and then go save the next one. I hugged the saline bottle warmer tight against my chest, fighting back tears. I will. Then Eric raised his gloved hand and brushed away the droplets clinging to my lashes. Don't cry. It's too cold. You'll crack your skin. The scent of leather and faint tobacco drifted past my nose, dominant yet unexpectedly gentle. Then, Laura! A hoarse, trembling voice called from behind me. I turned. And there he was, Victor, sitting in his wheelchair. Daniel standing just behind him. I had no idea how long they'd been there. Laura, Victor said again, his voice raw, like it had been scraped by sandpaper. I murmured a quick sorry to Eric, and walked toward him. Did you sign the divorce papers? Up close, I could see the bloodshot eyes, the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He looked worse than I did after an all-nighter. I told you, he rasped. We need to talk. There's nothing left to talk about. I replied coldly. If you won't sign, wait for the lawsuit. I turned to leave, but Daniel stepped in front of me. Madam, Victor came all night to find you. So what? I cut him off sharply. Do you expect me to kneel and thank him for the favor? Chapter 15. Victor hadn't come alone. He'd brought with him a batch of emergency supplies, blankets and heavy tents, just in time to save everyone from the biting cold. Emma told me everyone was grateful to him. One kind old lady even prayed over her rosary, chanting blessings for Victor's injured leg. My hand paused mid-scrub. I suddenly remembered what Victor had said earlier. Laura, I came here to atone. I didn't want to know what that meant. Whatever he was here for, it had nothing to do with me anymore. As the initial phase of rescue came to an end, the number of trauma patients arriving at the field clinic dwindled, but the blizzard and the cold wave caused chronic illnesses to relapse among the elderly and weak. Many children also caught colds, coughing non-stop in the freezing air. I had to shift from surgery to internal medicine, hugging my phone, consulting colleagues thousands of miles away for advice. But just when I thought things might finally calm down, they didn't, because Selena arrived, still as reckless and arrogant as ever. She barged straight into my consultation tent. Laura, I need to talk to you. Get out! I was listening to the lungs of an infant in swaddling clothes, and there were more than a dozen patients still waiting outside. There are no words for the kind of fury that burned in me. Selena tried to argue, but Emma shoved her out, half pushing, half dragging. Still, Selena wouldn't stop. She stood outside the tent, yelling my name over and over again. For the first time, I pulled out my phone and called Eric for help. Captain, someone's causing a disturbance in my tent. Can you handle it, please? Eric arrived quickly, and with him, a grim-faced Victor. I'm sorry, Victor said softly. I'll make her leave. Leave? Selena snapped. Did I hear you right? Victor, who are you to tell me to leave? You're the one who said you'd take responsibility for me. Now you're going back on your word? Victor's face was ashen. When he looked at me, there was no light left in his eyes, only emptiness, I guess. I don't even have the chance to regret anymore, do I, Laura? I didn't answer. He gave a broken, hollow laugh. I understand. The only reason I insisted on coming here was to feel for myself what you must have felt back then. His throat constricted, the muscles in his neck tensed, and after a long silence, he finally forced out the words, I'm sorry, Laura. I'll sign the papers. Chapter 16. 2 weeks later, the medical team finally left Y City. Eric came to see us off again. When we shook hands goodbye, I suddenly felt something in my palm, a turquoise earring. Perhaps noticing my surprise and hesitation, Eric smiled and explained, turquoise symbolizes luck and safety. It's also a token of gratitude and blessing, from all of us, to you. So please, don't refuse it, okay? Eric might have the rugged kind of handsomeness, but his eyes, they were strikingly deep and clear. With those eyes fixed on me, I couldn't bring myself to say no. Still, that turquoise earring felt heavy in my hand, as if its owner had placed some unspoken meaning upon it. That suspicion was confirmed when I met Santiago later. Don't believe his nonsense. That earring is his own. I saw him wearing it the last time he came to our house. Suddenly, the turquoise in my hand Felt scorching hot. Then what should I do? Return it? Does this even count as jewelry? Can I mail it back? Why are you panicking? Santiago said, his tone shifting in an instant. Why not think about it? He's from a well-off family. A decent guy. 100 times better than that Victor. I couldn't help but laugh, half exasperated. Come on, can you be serious for once? We're not here to compare people. I admit he's a good man, but he and I aren't a match. Besides, I hadn't yet walked out of the shadow of my last marriage, but to my utter disbelief, Santiago had barely promised not to play matchmaker before running off to tell Eric, give it up. Laura said you two aren't compatible. When I later heard that from Eric himself, I wished the ground would swallow me whole. I'm sorry, I stammered. I didn't mean it that way. My brother just talks too much. I'm really sorry. Eric was silent. He didn't hang up. Just when the silence grew unbearable, when I was about to scratch holes into my prescription pad out of sheer embarrassment, his voice came through, low and calm. Laura, your brother's not wrong. I've liked you for a long time. Chapter 17. From the hospital corridor window, you could see countless construction sites. People were working hard to rebuild the wounds left by the earthquake. But some wounds never heal. Just like some people, once missed, they're gone forever. Eric said he had liked me for a long time, but after 4 years of marriage with Victor, I no longer knew how much love or courage I still had left to give someone else. No matter how much, it wouldn't be fair to the other person. So, I refused Eric. I told him I just wanted to become the best surgeon I could be. Eric seemed to have expected that. Laura, you've always been excellent, he said softly, but if that's your wish, then I hope it comes true. The turquoise earring he'd given me hung from my phone as a charm during night shifts, or when I was stuck writing a paper. I'd find myself staring at that blue-green pendant. Its strange, beautiful patterns calming me down. One day before the Lunar New Year, Victor and I finalized the divorce. There was a long scratch on his face. Selena's doing, because Victor had changed the terms of the agreement. I ended up with half of his assets. As we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Selena arrived, breathless with fury, and confronted me right in front of him. Laura, how clever of you. Not only did you take half of Victor's fortune, but you still have him pining for you. The former white moonlight of his life had dimmed completely. Her former arrogance had curdled into bitterness and jealousy. Victor, sitting in his wheelchair, couldn't stop her. Embarrassment and that glaring scratch had stripped away all his former grace. I had no desire for revenge anymore, but that didn't mean I'd let Selena spit her venom in my face. Selena, what Victor gave me wasn't half of his fortune. It was payment for that leg of his. And as for why, you know better than anyone. Chapter 18, Epilogue. The following spring, when the begonias were in bloom, I published my 4th research paper and became the youngest associate chief surgeon in the hospital. And at the same time, I had a new admirer, a ruggedly handsome one. Eric had resigned and moved to Sea City, intending to start his own company here. When Santiago brought me to his welcome dinner, I was completely caught off guard. But Santiago just said, he's overdue to come home and take over the family business anyway. Eric laughed softly. You don't need to feel pressured, he said. I really am just here to start a company. But halfway through dinner, Santiago got an urgent call and had to leave. The atmosphere shifted. A waiter approached, handing over a bouquet of crabapple flowers, wrapped in white paper. Eric took it, then passed it to me. Your brother said, you're not ready yet, but this season is too beautiful. I don't want to miss it again, so I hope you'll give me a chance to at least take a number and wait in line.